Doyan stood in the center of the massive chamber, feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his life. The room stretched out in every direction, its walls made of something that looked like crystal, but shifted colors with every breath he took. Above him, below him, and all around him floated the holographic forms of the Galactic Council representatives. There were hundreds of them. Each one represented a different species from across the known galaxy. Some looked like floating jellyfish made of light. Others resembled massive insects with too many eyes. A few appeared almost humanoid, but with features that made Doyan's stomach turn. One looked like a living mountain of rock. Another seemed to be made entirely of flowing water that somehow held its shape. They all watched him with expressions he could not read. At the center of it all floated Velmoth, the supreme arbiter of the Galactic Council. The being was enormous, a crystalline structure that pulsed with inner light. Its voice, when it spoke, came from everywhere at once and seemed to vibrate through Doyan's bones. "Ambassador of Earth," Velmoth said, and the words translated perfectly in Doyan's earpiece. "We welcome humanity into the community of civilized species. Your discovery of faster-than-light travel has proven that your kind possesses sufficient intelligence to join us. However, with this membership comes responsibility." Doyan straightened his shoulders. He had prepared for this moment for months. First contact with alien life, the moment that would define humanity's place among the stars. He had imagined trade agreements, cultural exchanges, shared scientific knowledge. He smiled, ready to accept whatever ceremonial duties came with joining this ancient federation. "Thank you, Supreme Arbiter," Doyan said. "Earth is honored to join the galactic community. We look forward to peaceful cooperation and mutual benefit." "Indeed," Velmoth replied. "We shall now discuss the terms of Earth's tribute." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Tribute. Doyan's smile faltered. "I'm sorry," he said carefully. "Could you clarify what you mean by tribute?" "The standard contribution that all member species provide to maintain the Council's governance and protection," Velmoth explained, as if speaking to a child. "Earth will submit 40% of its annual resource production to the Council reserves. This includes minerals, organic materials, manufactured goods, and energy. Additionally, Earth will provide 25% of its population for labor conscription. These workers will be assigned to Council projects throughout the galaxy as needed." Doyan felt the blood drain from his face. "You're asking us to give you nearly half of everything we produce, and a quarter of our people." "We are not asking," Velmoth said, and now there was an edge to that infinite voice. "This is the requirement for membership. It is the same requirement that all species meet. The Council has maintained peace and order in the galaxy for over 4,000 years through this system. You should feel privileged to contribute to such stability." "And if we refuse?" Doyan asked, though he already knew he should not have said it. The chamber went silent. Every holographic representative turned to look at him with renewed interest. Velmoth pulsed with a deep red light. "No species refuses," the Supreme Arbiter said slowly. "To refuse is to reject civilization itself. To refuse is to mark your world as a threat to galactic order. Species that refuse are subject to corrective measures." "What kind of corrective measures?" "The kind that ensure compliance," Velmoth said. "You have 30 standard days to return to Earth and secure your government's agreement. The tribute collectors will arrive on the 31st day. I suggest you use your time wisely, Ambassador." The holographic forms began to fade. Within seconds, Doyan stood alone in the chamber. His hands shook. His mouth felt dry. He had come here expecting to open a new chapter in human history. Instead, he had learned that humanity had graduated from one cage to another. The journey back to Earth took 6 days. Doyan spent every moment of it reviewing the data, hoping he had misunderstood something. He had not. The Council's records were clear. Every single species in the Federation paid the tribute. Some had been doing it for so long that they had forgotten they ever had a choice. When his ship entered orbit around Earth, Doyan felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. The blue planet below looked so peaceful, so beautiful. Its people had no idea what was coming. He went directly to the United Earth Assembly in Geneva. The massive chamber was packed with representatives from every nation. Admiral Hai Jin sat in the military section, her face stern and focused. Dr. Mino occupied a seat among the scientific advisors, his fingers drumming nervously on his tablet. President Jiwan sat at the head of the assembly, her expression unreadable. Doyan presented everything. He held nothing back. He showed them the recordings of his meeting with the Council. He displayed the tribute requirements in stark numbers. 40% of all resources. 25% of all people. Every year, forever. The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted over each other. Some demanded immediate military mobilization. Others insisted on negotiation. A few even suggested compliance, arguing that resistance would only lead to Earth's destruction. Admiral Hai Jin stood, and her voice cut through the noise. We need to face facts. We have 45 military spacecraft capable of combat. 45. The Council has thousands. Tens of thousands. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours in most areas. If we fight, we lose. If we surrender, we lose anyway, Minho said, standing as well. Just more slowly. They'll bleed us dry over decades instead of destroying us in days. Either way, humanity ends. There has to be a diplomatic solution, one representative said. Some compromise. There is no compromise, Doyan said quietly. I asked. They've been doing this for 4,000 years. They don't negotiate. They don't bargain. They rule, and everyone else obeys. The debate continued for hours. Some argued for submission. Others demanded defiance. Most simply seemed paralyzed by the impossible choice before them. Finally, President Jiwan stood. The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to her. 400 years ago, she said, humanity was divided into hundreds of nations. We fought wars over resources, over ideologies, over land. We nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times over. But we learned. We grew. We united. We reached for the stars because we refused to be bound by our limitations. She paused, looking around the chamber. Now we face a new limitation. The Council tells us that freedom costs 40% of our resources and 25% of our people. They tell us this is the price of civilization. They tell us we have no choice. Jiwan's voice grew stronger. But we've always had a choice. Humanity has always had a choice. We can bow, or we can stand. We can submit, or we can fight. The Council has maintained their system for 4,000 years. Because no one has challenged them. Because every species eventually chooses survival over dignity. She looked directly at Doyan. Send them our answer, Ambassador. Tell the Galactic Council that humanity chooses both survival and dignity. Tell them our answer is simple and clear. Jiwan's eyes blazed with defiance. Tell them absolutely not. Tell them we refuse. Tell them that if they want Earth's resources and Earth's people, they will have to take them by force. And we will make them pay for every inch. The chamber erupted again, but this time it was different. This time there was unity in the chaos. The representatives were not debating whether to resist. They were already planning how Doyan felt a chill run down his spine. He looked at Hai Jin, who nodded grimly. He looked at Minho, who was already pulling up technical specifications on his tablet. In 30 days, the tribute collectors would arrive. In 30 days, humanity would give the galaxy its answer, The answer would be war. The transmission went out on the 30th day. Earth's response to the Galactic Council's tribute demand was broadcast on every frequency humanity could generate, in every language the Council recognized. The message was simple, direct, and deliberate. Absolutely not. 2 words. That was all. No explanation. No justification. No apology. Just those 2 words, repeated in over 800 different alien languages, dot in the council chambers. Velmuth watched the message arrive. The Supreme Arbiter's crystalline form pulsed with colors that shifted from blue to deep crimson. Around the chamber, hundreds of council representatives stirred in confusion. "This must be an error," one representative said. It was a creature that looked like a massive slug with dozens of eye stalks. Perhaps they did not understand the terms. They understood perfectly, Velmuth said, and the anger in that voice made several representatives flinch. "They are refusing. These primitive creatures are actually refusing." "When was the last time a species refused?" another representative asked. 4,073 years ago, Velmuth answered. The Kethrak Dominion. They believed their military might would protect them. It did not. Within 6 months, their civilization was reduced to scattered survivors. Within a year, they agreed to triple tribute as punishment for their defiance. "Then we respond the same way," the slug creature said. "We send the compliance fleet. They will see our power and surrender immediately." "Dispatch 200 warships," Velmuth commanded. "Make it clear that this defiance will not be tolerated." On Earth, Admiral Hygiene stood in the orbital command center, watching the displays that showed the approaching council fleet. 200 ships. Each one was larger than anything humanity had ever built. Each one carried weapons that could crack a moon in half. 45 ships against 200, Captain Taiwan said beside her. He commanded Earth's newest and most advanced warship, the Soul. "Those are bad numbers." "They're terrible numbers," Hygiene agreed. "Which is why we're not going to fight them the way they expect." She pulled up a tactical display. The Council fleet was moving in a standard formation, advancing slowly toward Earth as if they had all the time in the world. They probably thought they did. "Dr. Mino," Hygiene said into her communicator, "please tell me you have good news." Minho's face appeared on the screen. He looked exhausted. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but he was grinning. "I have interesting news. Whether it's good depends on your definition of good. Talk to me." "The Council's ships use dimensional folding for their FTL travel," Minho explained. "It's efficient, reliable, and very predictable. Our drives use quantum tunneling. It's less efficient, less reliable, but it makes our movements much harder to predict. Their targeting computers are designed for ships that move in straight, calculable lines." "And our ships don't move that way," Hygiene said, understanding. "Exactly. Their sensors can track us, but their weapons can't quite lock on properly. We're like mosquitoes to them. Annoying, hard to hit, and potentially dangerous if we're smart about it." Taiwan leaned forward. "So we use hit-and-run tactics. Strike fast, strike hard, then jump away before they can respond." "That's the idea," Minot said. "I can't promise it will win the war, but it might let us survive long enough to make them think twice about easy victories." The Council fleet reached Mars orbit on the 34th day. They sent a final demand for Earth's surrender. Hygiene sent back a single word, "No." The battle began badly for Earth. The Council's weapons were devastating. Their first volley destroyed 3 human ships before they could even return fire. Their shields absorbed humanity's missiles as if they were nothing more than fireworks. But then Taiwan and the other captains began to move. The Soul darted between 2 massive Council dreadnoughts, firing its railguns at point-blank range into their engine sections. The shots did minimal damage, but they forced both ships to adjust their positions. Before they could retaliate, the Soul had jumped 300 kilometers away. The destroyer Bizan copied the tactic, sliding underneath a council cruiser and unleashing everything it had into the ship's belly. The cruiser's shields held, but the attack created a brief gap in the council formation. "They're not used to this," Suman said from her intelligence station. She had been analyzing the council ship's response patterns. "Look at their formations. They're designed to fight enemies who stand still and trade shots. They don't know how to handle ships that refuse to engage properly." "Then let's keep refusing," Hygiene ordered. "All ships, maximum evasion. No predictable patterns. Make them chase shadows." For 6 hours, the battle raged around Mars. Human ships flickered in and out of existence, appearing long enough to fire a few shots before vanishing again. The Council fleet's superior firepower meant nothing if they could not hit their targets, but humanity was losing. Slowly, inevitably losing. 20 ships gone, 23, 25. The numbers climbed while the Council fleet remained almost intact. "We can't keep this up," Taiwan said. His ship had taken damage. Half his crew was dead or injured. "We're buying time, but we're paying in blood." "Then let's make the payment worth something," Hygiene said. She opened a channel to all remaining ships. "This is Admiral Hygiene. We've shown them that humans don't surrender easily. Now let's show them that humans don't surrender at all. Ramming protocols. Volunteer ships only." There was a moment of silence. Then, one by one, responses came back. Seoul volunteering. Incheon volunteering. Gwangju volunteering. 15 ships in total. 15 captains who looked at their damaged vessels and decided to make their deaths count for something. Taiwan looked at his remaining crew. They looked back at him. No one spoke. They did not need to. They had all joined the military, knowing this day might come. They had all sworn to protect Earth. "Helm," Taiwan said quietly. "Plot a ramming course for the Council flagship. Maximum speed." The Soul turned toward the massive dreadnought at the center of the Council formation. Its engines burned at full power, pushing the ship faster and faster. The Council flagship's weapons opened fire, but the Soul was moving too erratically, too desperately. At the last moment, Taiwan's ship punched through the flagship's shields. The Soul's reinforced bow struck the dreadnought's command ridge. Like a bullet through glass. Both ships died. The explosion lit up the space around Mars like a small sun. When the light faded, the Council flagship was tumbling through space, split nearly in half. The Soul was gone completely. 14 other human ships followed Taiwan's example. 14 other captains aimed their dying vessels at Council warships and refused to miss. The Council fleet, which had never faced an enemy willing to die rather than submit, suddenly found itself in chaos. Ships collided trying to evade the ramming attacks. Formation discipline collapsed. The commander of the Council fleet, a being whose name translated roughly as Corvan, watched in horror as nearly 50 of his ships were destroyed or crippled by an enemy that should have surrendered hours ago. "Retreat," Corvan ordered. "All ships withdraw to Rally Point Gamma." The Council fleet jumped away, leaving behind wreckage and the remaining 22 human ships. In the command center, Hygiene stared at the tactical display. 23 ships lost. 23 crews dead. But the Council fleet had retreated. The tribute collectors had been turned away. "We won?" Someone asked uncertainly. "We survived," Hygiene corrected. "That's not the same thing." She was right. In the Council chambers, Velmuth was not discouraged. The Supreme Arbiter was furious. "Prepare the subjugation armada," Velmuth commanded. "Every available ship. Every able crew. These humans want to fight? Then we will show them what war truly means. We will show them what happens when a primitive species challenges the order of the galaxy. The subjugation armada has not been deployed in 800 years, one representative said nervously. Are you certain this is necessary? They destroyed 50 of our ships, Velmoth said, and the crystalline form blazed with light. 50 ships, lost to a species that has barely learned to leave their own star system. If we do not respond with overwhelming force, other species will begin to question whether the tribute is truly necessary. We will crush Earth. We will make an example of humanity that will echo through the galaxy for the next 1,000 years. The Armada began to gather. 1,200 warships. The largest military force the Council had assembled in centuries. They would need 60 days to fully mobilize, but once they arrived at Earth, there would be no escape. No clever tactics. No desperate sacrifices. There would only be the end of humanity's brief defiance. On Earth, Doyan received the intelligence about the coming Armada from Counselor Thex, one of the few Council members who had secretly expressed doubts about the tribute system. The numbers were clear. 1,200 ships. He brought the information to President Yuan. We have 2 months, Doyan said. Maybe less. After that, they'll bring enough force to destroy every city on Earth. Ji-Wan looked out the window at the blue sky. Somewhere up there, 22 battered ships limped back toward home. Somewhere out there, the largest fleet in galactic history was preparing to end humanity's existence. Then we have 2 months to prepare, Ji-Wan said. 2 months to build. 2 months to plan. 2 months to show the galaxy that humans don't give up. She turned to face Doyan. Send a message to every nation, every factory, every shipyard. Tell them what's coming. Tell them we need everything they can give. And send another message to the galaxy. What message? Tell them that Earth stands for freedom. Tell them that we will fight for it. Tell them that anyone who wants to stand with us is welcome. The Council has ruled through fear for 4,000 years. Let's see what happens when someone finally challenges that fear. The countdown began. 60 days until the subjugation armada arrived. 60 days to prepare for humanity's last stand. Got the news spread like fire across dry grass. On worlds scattered throughout the galaxy, beings who had paid tribute for centuries, for millennia, heard an impossible story. A newly discovered species had said no to the Galactic Council. Not only had they said no, but they had fought back. And they had survived. On Torvog 4, a heavy industrial world covered in factories and processing plants, a dock worker named Crix heard the news while loading tribute shipments onto a Council transport. Crix belonged to a species that looked like upright bears, covered in gray fur. His people had been paying tribute for 1,200 years. Is it true? Another worker asked, speaking in whispers. Did the humans really fight? The Council fleet retreated, Crix said, checking the data on his tablet. 50 ships destroyed. The humans lost more, but they made the Council bleed. The workers stood in silence, looking at the crates they were loading. 40% of everything Torvok IV produced went into these shipments. 40% of their food, their medicine, their technology. All of it loaded onto Council ships and sent away. While Crix's people went hungry, what if we just stopped? Someone asked. They would send enforcers. Another worker replied. They always send enforcers. But what if everyone stopped at the same time? Crix asked. What if the Council's ships arrived and there was nothing to load? The idea hung in the air like a dangerous promise. On Yelthra Prime, a world of water and floating cities, a teacher named Silka read the reports to her students. Silka's species resembled translucent jellyfish that could hover in air. They were peaceful, philosophical, and had been paying tribute for 3,000 years. The humans chose to fight rather than submit, Silka explained to the young ones floating before her. Many of them died. But they died free. What does free mean? One student asked. The word was ancient in their language. It had not been used in living memory. Syl had to look it up in historical records. What she found made her tentacles tremble. Her people had not always paid tribute. Long ago, they had resisted. But that history had been erased from modern education. The council had made sure of it. That night, Silka began teaching her students the old stories. The stories of Yelthra before the tribute. The stories the council wanted forgotten. In the council chambers, Velmoth watched the reports with growing alarm. Worker strikes on Torvak 4, protests on Yelthra Prime, 12 other worlds showing signs of unrest. It had been only 2 weeks since Earth's defiance, and already the carefully maintained order was beginning to crack. We should have destroyed them immediately, one representative said. Every day we delay, the infection spreads. The subjugation armada requires time to mobilize properly, Velmoth replied, though the Supreme Arbiter's crystalline form pulsed with frustrated red light. 45 more days. Then the humans and their rebellion will be crushed so thoroughly that no one will dare question the council for another 1,000 years. But Velmoth could feel it. Something was changing in the galaxy. Something that had been dormant for centuries was waking up. On Earth, Junho worked in a small office buried deep beneath Geneva. His job officially was cultural liaison. His real job was intelligence operative and organizer. While the rest of humanity prepared for war, Junho prepared for revolution. He sent encrypted messages to dissidents across the galaxy. He made contact with rebels who had been hiding in shadows for decades. He found council members like Vex, who secretly despised the tribute system, but had been too afraid to speak out. We have sympathizers on 17 worlds. Junho reported to President Jiwan. Most of them are too scared to act openly, but they're sharing information. Troop movements, supply lines, political tensions within the council. Can any of them help us directly? Jiwan asked. 3 systems have the military capacity to fight, Junho said. But they won't commit unless they believe we can win. Right now, we're an inspiration. But we're not a movement. Not yet. Then we make ourselves a movement, Jiwan decided. Prepare a broadcast. I want to speak to the galaxy. Dr. Soyan helped prepare the message. As a xenolinguist, she had spent years studying alien cultures and languages. Now she used that knowledge to craft a message that would resonate across dozens of species. Many of you have forgotten what freedom means, Jiwan's recorded message began. The broadcast was transmitted on open channels across the galaxy. A council has ruled for so long that you think their system is natural. You think tribute is the price of civilization. You think submission is the only way to survive. The president's image appeared on screens across hundreds of worlds. But humanity remembers freedom. We remember what it means to stand on our own. We remember what it means to fight for what is ours. And we are here to tell you that freedom is worth fighting for. We will not submit. We will not bow. We will stand, even if standing means we fall. Jiwan's voice grew stronger. The council is sending their armada to destroy us. They will bring 1,000 ships to crush 100. They will try to make an example of Earth, but every day we stand is a day that proves resistance is possible. Every day we fight is a day that reminds the galaxy what it has lost. She looked directly into the camera. Stand with us, or stand aside, but know that humanity will never kneel. The message ended. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the responses began to come in. On Torvak 4, Crix and the other dock workers stopped loading the tribute shipments. They simply walked away from their posts, leaving the council transports empty. When the enforcers arrived to force them back to work, they found the entire dock district shut down. Thousands of workers standing together, refusing to move. On Yelthra Prime, millions of citizens gathered in the floating city centers, holding vigils for Earth. They did not call for resistance yet. They did not need to. The simple act of acknowledging Earth's defiance was itself an act of rebellion. 5 other worlds experienced similar protests. Worker strikes, public demonstrations, civil disobedience. Nothing that would be enough to overthrow the council, but enough to create cracks in the foundation. Admiral Hygiene stood in the orbital shipyard, watching as workers swarmed over the growing fleet. Earth's 45 military ships had been reduced to 22. But in the weeks since the first battle, humanity had been working around the clock to build more. We have 345 ships now, Captain Junho reported. He had survived the Battle of Mars and now commanded the destroyer Daegu. But most of them are civilian vessels with weapons strapped to the hull. Freighters with missile pods. Mining ships with railguns. They'll fall apart in a real fight. Then we make sure they don't have to fight for long, Hyjin said. She pulled up a tactical display. Dr. Minho has been working on something interesting. Minho appeared on the screen, looking even more exhausted than before, but still grinning. Remember how our FTL drives make us unpredictable? I've been working on taking that to the extreme. Automated drones that jump randomly through a battle space, firing whenever they get a clear shot. How many can you build? Hygiene asked. With every factory on Earth working on it? Maybe 10,000 drones. They're small, cheap, and designed to overwhelm targeting systems. The Council's ships are built to fight other capital ships, not swarms of gnats. Build them, Hygiene ordered. Build as many as you can in the next month. Counselor Thex sent Juno another message. This one was more urgent than the others. The subjugation armada will arrive in 30 days, the message read. But you should know that the Council is having internal conflicts. Some members question whether destroying Earth is wise. They fear it will create martyrs and make the situation worse. Others believe mercy now will be seen as weakness. Velmuth has the majority, but it is not unanimous. If you can survive the Armada's first assault, you might create enough doubt to split the Council. Junho brought the message to Jiwan. So we need to not just survive, the President said. We need to win, or at least make it look like we're winning. Against 1,200 ships? Junho asked. How do we make that look like a victory? We don't fight alone, Jiwan said. She had been thinking about this for days. We invite the galaxy to watch. We broadcast everything. Every battle. Every loss. Every moment of human courage. The Council has maintained power through fear and ignorance. We break that by showing everyone what resistance looks like. She stood up, looking out at the Earth below. And we pray that somewhere out there, someone is brave enough to stand with us when it matters most. On a distant world called Hervac II, a military commander named Talon watched Earth's broadcasts. Talon's species looked like bipedal lizards covered in blue scales. They had military ships. Not many, but enough to make a difference. Hervac II had been paying tribute for 800 years. Talon had watched the Battle of Mars. He had seen human ships sacrifice themselves rather than surrender. He had seen courage that his own people had forgotten they possessed. Now he called a meeting of his senior officers. Earth will fall, one officer said. The Armada is too large. Their defiance, while admirable, is futile. Perhaps, Talon agreed. But what if it is not? What if they find a way to survive? And what if they survive because we help them? We would be marked as rebels, another officer warned. The Council would come for us next. The Council is coming anyway, Talon said quietly. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but they will keep taking from us until there is nothing left. The humans are giving us a chance to take a stand. Perhaps the only chance we will ever have. He looked around the table at his officers. I am taking our fleet to Earth. Anyone who wishes to remain behind may do so without shame. But I will not let humanity stand alone. Not when they are fighting for something we all lost long ago. 5 other systems had similar conversations. 5 other commanders looked at the approaching armada and made impossible choices. The countdown continued. 20 days. 15 days. 10 days. The subjugation armada drew closer to Earth with each passing moment. The largest military force in galactic history, preparing to crush a rebellion before it could truly begin. But something had changed in the galaxy. A spark had been lit, and sparks, if given enough air, can become fires that consume everything. The subjugation armada arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system like a storm, made of metal and death. 1,200 warships, each one a monument to the Council's power. They moved in perfect formation, blotting out the stars behind them. Admiral Hai Jin stood in the command center, watching the displays. Beside her stood what remained of Earth's command staff. President Ji-wan had joined them for the battle. If Earth fell, she wanted to fall with her people. 345 ships against 1,200, Hai Jin said quietly. Plus 10,000 drones. It's still not enough. It never was, Ji-wan replied. But we're not fighting to win. We're fighting so the galaxy remembers that we tried. The human fleet waited in a defensive grid around Earth. Military vessels held the front line. Behind them, the converted civilian ships bristled with improvised weapons. Mining vessels carried railguns designed to crack asteroids. Cargo freighters had been turned into missile platforms. Even some passenger liners had been armored and armed, their crews replaced with volunteers who knew they were flying to their deaths. Captain Young Ji commanded one of those converted freighters. The ship had once carried grain between Earth and Mars. Now it carried enough explosives to crack a small moon. Young Ji looked at her crew, all of them former cargo haulers and dock workers who had volunteered for this suicide mission. We're not soldiers, she said to them. We're just regular people. But today, regular people are going to show the galaxy what humans are made of. The Council fleet came to a stop just outside weapons range. A communication channel opened. Admiral Kyrton appeared on the screens throughout the human fleet. The alien commander looked vaguely reptilian, with scales that shifted between green and gold. I am Admiral Kyrton of the Galactic Council Subjugation Armada, the alien said. His voice was surprisingly gentle. I have been authorized to offer you one final chance to surrender. Submit to Council authority. Pay the required tribute. Your defiance will be punished, but your species will survive. Hai Jin opened a return channel. Every human ship broadcast her response. Every sensor in the system recorded it. The message was being transmitted across the galaxy in real time. This is Admiral Hai Jin of the United Earth Defense Force. Humanity does not surrender. Humanity does not bow. If you want Earth, Admiral, you will have to take it from us. She paused, then added, Come and try. Kyrton's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. Respect, perhaps. Or pity. So be it, he said, and closed the channel. The Council fleet opened fire. The space between Earth and the Armada lit up with weapon fire. Particle beams, plasma cannons, and kinetic weapons crossed the void at the speed of light. Human ships scattered, activating their quantum drives to jump erratically through the battlefield Dr. Minho's drones deployed. 10,000 small craft, each one barely larger than a car, appeared throughout the combat zone. They moved randomly, impossibly, jumping from point to point and firing small railguns whenever they had a clear shot. The Council's targeting computers, designed for predictable capital ship combat, struggled to track and eliminate the swarm, but the Council's advantage was simply too great. Human ships died. The destroyer Ulsan took a direct hit from 3 different Council battleships simultaneously and simply ceased to exist. The converted cargo ship Era fought bravely for 6 minutes before its improvised shields failed and it broke apart under sustained fire. "We're losing ships faster than expected," Captain Juno reported from the Daegu. "At this rate, we have maybe 3 hours before we're completely overwhelmed." "Then we make those 3 hours count," Hygiene replied. "All civilian vessels activate suicide protocols. Time to make them pay for every inch." Youngji heard the order and smiled grimly. She had been waiting for this. Her ship, the Samchok, was barely holding together. Its shields were gone. Its hull was breached in a dozen places. But its cargo hold was still intact, packed with enough mining explosives to match a small nuclear weapon. "All hands, this is the captain," Youngji said over the ship's intercom. "It's been an honor serving with you. Now let's show them what civilian ship captains can do." The Samchok turned toward the nearest Council carrier. Its engines burned at maximum power, accelerating the dying freighter toward the massive warship. Council weapons tore into the Samchok, but Youngji kept her ship steady. At the last moment, just before impact, she triggered the cargo hold. The explosion consumed both ships. When the light faded, the Council carrier was gone, blown into debris and radiation. The Samchok had ceased to exist, but 73 other civilian ships followed Youngji's example. 73 converted freighters, passenger liners, and mining vessels that chose to die as weapons rather than watch their world fall. 73 captains who aimed their ships at Council vessels and refused to miss. The Council fleet found itself in chaos. Ships collided trying to avoid the kamikaze attacks. Formation discipline broke down. Kyriton watched in growing horror as his carefully organized armada devolved into a brawl. "These humans are insane," his tactical officer said. "They're throwing away their lives for minimal gains." "No," Kyriton said slowly. "They're buying time." "But for what?" He got his answer 30 minutes into the battle dot. New contacts appeared on the edge of the system. 89 ships, dropping out of FTL in a ragged formation. They were not Council ships. Talon's fleet from Hervak II had arrived. With them came 6 other rebel fleets from worlds that had decided Earth's defiance was worth supporting. They were not professional military forces. They were obsolete patrol ships, converted cargo vessels, and outdated frigates that most species would have scrapped decades ago. But they were there, and they were fighting. "This is Commander Talon to the human fleet." The transmission came through. "Hervak II stands with Earth, for freedom, for dignity, for all the worlds that have forgotten what it means to choose." Talon's ships crashed into the Council fleet's flank. Their weapons were outdated, but they knew how to use them. A Hervakian destroyer disabled a Council cruiser with a precisely aimed shot to its power core. 3 frigates from Yelthra Prime swarmed a Council battleship, their coordinated fire overwhelming its shields dot in the Council chambers. Velmuth watched the battle through real-time feeds. The Supreme Arbiter's crystalline form blazed with fury. "They dare," Velmuth said. "They dare to rebel against us." "We are losing ships," one representative said nervously. "The Armada is taking heavy casualties." "I do not care about casualties," Velmuth snapped. "Crush them. Destroy them all. Make such an example that no species will ever dare to resist again." But on the battlefield, Kyriton was having different thoughts. He had been a military commander for 40 years. He had fought in dozens of campaigns. But he had never faced an enemy like this. Never faced crews who would deliberately destroy their own ships, if it meant taking Council vessels with them dot, and now he was fighting a 2-front battle. The human ships were bad enough with their unpredictable movements and suicidal tactics. But now he had to deal with rebel forces who knew Council weaknesses, who understood Council formations because they had once served in similar fleets. "Admiral, we have lost 270 ships," his tactical officer reported. "The humans have lost 218, and the rebels have lost 41. But our advantage is shrinking." Kyriton looked at the display. He could win this battle. He had enough ships, enough firepower. If he committed everything, he could destroy Earth and every ship defending it. But then what? He opened a private channel to Counselor Vex, who had been sending him intelligence throughout the battle. "Tell me honestly," Kyriton said. "If we destroy Earth today, does this end?" "No," Vex replied. "This is just the beginning. Earth has shown the galaxy that resistance is possible. If you win here, you create martyrs. If you lose, you create heroes. The Council's authority is broken either way. Then what should I do?" "You could do what no Council commander has done in 4,000 years, Vex said. "You could choose mercy over domination." Kyriton closed the channel and looked at the tactical display again. He thought about the human ship that had rammed the flagship during the Battle of Mars. He thought about the converted freighters throwing themselves at his fleet. He thought about Talon and the other rebel commanders who had risked everything to defend a world they had never visited. He thought about the tribute system, about the 40% of resources and 25% of populations that every species had been forced to give for millennia, about the civilizations that had been bled dry over centuries while the Council grew fat on their suffering. And he made a decision that would change the galaxy. "All ships," Kyriton ordered. "Cease fire. Hold position." His tactical officer stared at him. "Admiral?" "Cease fire," Kyriton repeated. "Open a channel to the human fleet." Hygiene watched in disbelief as the Council ships stopped shooting. They did not retreat. They simply held position, weapons powered down. "This is Admiral Kyriton," the alien commander's voice came through. "I am ordering my fleet to stand down. I will not be the one who destroys the last species brave enough to say no." He paused. "The Council's era is over. It has been over for a long time. We just did not want to admit it. Earth has proven what I have suspected for years. The tribute system is maintained not through strength, but through fear. And fear, once broken, cannot be easily restored." "What are you saying?" Hygiene asked. "I am saying that the subjugation armada withdraws. I am saying that Earth has won not through military victory, but through showing the galaxy what courage looks like. And I am saying that the Council will soon face a choice: reform or collapse." The transmission ended. The Council fleet began to withdraw, jumping away system by system. Within an hour, they were gone. Hygiene stood in the command center, surrounded by her exhausted staff. Outside, the remains of Earth's fleet limped back toward home. 287 ships lost, 180,000 people dead, but Earth still stood, still free. "We did it," someone said quietly. "No," President Jiwan said. "We survived. The real work starts now." She looked up at the stars, where she knew Velmoth and the Council were watching. "They'll come back," she said, "or they'll fall apart. Either way, the galaxy just changed forever." 3 months after the battle, Earth looked different. The orbital stations that had been destroyed were being rebuilt, but they were no longer just human constructions. Ships from Hervik II, Yelthra Prime, and 5 other worlds filled the space around Earth. Engineers from a dozen species worked together, sharing technology and knowledge that the Council had kept deliberately separate for millennia. Ambassador Doyan stood in what had once been the Council's orbital facility. It had been renamed the Free Assembly Station. Representatives from 23 worlds now gathered here regularly, working to build something new. Something better than what the Council had offered. The reports are getting worse, Council-elect said, reviewing data on a tablet. The Reptilian Council number had defected fully after Kyrtan's withdrawal, bringing intelligence and credibility to the growing rebellion. 47 worlds have stopped paying tribute. The Council is trying to enforce collections, but they don't have enough ships. Too many fleets have defected or simply refused to fight. How is Velmoth responding? Doyon asked. Badly, Vex said with something that might have been a smile. The Supreme Arbiter is trying to hold the Council together through increasingly desperate measures. Yesterday, Velmoth ordered the bombardment of a minor world that refused tribute. But half the assigned fleet mutinied rather than carry out the order. Admiral Haijin entered the room, looking tired but determined. She had been working with Talon and other rebel commanders to coordinate their forces. We have a problem. The Council still controls the core systems. Over 500 worlds. If Velmoth can rally them, we could face an even larger armada. Can the Council rally them? Doyon asked. That depends on what happens in the next few weeks, Haijin said. She pulled up a star map. The Council is fracturing into factions. Some want reform. Others want to crush the rebellion by any means necessary. And some just want to maintain their own power, regardless of what happens to everyone else. President Jiwan joined the meeting via hologram. She was on Earth, meeting with the representatives of newly freed worlds who were arriving daily, seeking guidance and alliance. We need to move carefully, Jiwan said. We started this by refusing to bow. But we can't just replace the Council's tyranny with our own. These worlds don't need another master. They need support to govern themselves. Some of them have forgotten how, Vex said. My world paid tribute for 900 years. We have entire generations who have never known self-determination. Freedom is easy to want, but hard to practice when you have been a slave for centuries. Then we help them remember, Dr. Mingho said, appearing on another screen. He was in a laboratory with scientists from 4 different species. We share everything. Technology, knowledge, resources. The Council maintained control by keeping species dependent and separate. We do the opposite. Is that wise? One of the other representatives asked. It was a delegate from Torvok 4, the industrial world where the first strikes had begun. If we share everything, we lose any advantage we have. Advantage over whom? Minho asked. We're not trying to conquer the galaxy. We're trying to free it. That means trusting each other. The debate continued for hours. They discussed military coordination, resource sharing, and how to help newly independent worlds establish stable governments. They argued about how much assistance to offer and what kind of organization should replace the Council. On the Council's primary world, in the ancient chambers that had hosted representatives for 4,000 years, Velmoth faced a very different debate. We must accept reality, one representative said. It was a being that looked like a floating sphere of light. The tribute system is collapsing. We have lost control over nearly 1/10 of our territory. If we continue on this path, we will lose everything. Then we fight harder, Velmoth insisted. We make examples of the rebels. We show the galaxy what happens to those who defy us. We tried that, another representative said. We sent the subjugation armada. They withdrew. We have lost credibility, lost fear. Without those, we have nothing. We have the law, Velmoth said. We have 4,000 years of tradition. We have a system built on exploitation. Councillor Vex's voice came through from the Free Assembly Station. He was broadcasting to the council chambers openly now, no longer hiding his defection. A system that takes from the many to benefit the few. Earth has shown the galaxy that there is another way. A way where species cooperate instead of being forced to serve. You are a traitor, Velmoth said, the crystalline form blazing red. No, X replied. I am what you could have been. What the Council could have been. But you chose power over justice. Control over cooperation. And now you are paying the price. The transmission ended. The council chamber erupted into argument. Some members defended the old system. Others called for reform. A few even suggested the council should dissolve entirely and let each world govern itself. Velmoth realized with growing horror that the Supreme Arbiter was losing control. The foundation that had seemed so solid for millennia was crumbling out in desperation. Velmoth ordered an attack on Hervik II. If the Supreme Arbiter could not hold the Empire together, perhaps destroying one of the key rebel worlds would restore fear. But when the fleet arrived at Hervik II, they found it defended not just by Talon's ships, but by vessels from 20 other worlds. The attack force, facing organized resistance instead of isolated defiance, simply withdrew without firing a shot. The commander of that fleet, an admiral named Krovner, then did something unprecedented. She jumped her entire fleet to the Free Assembly Station and asked for asylum. I joined the Council military to maintain peace, Krovner said when she met with Doyun and Hai Jin, not to enforce tyranny. I will not fire on worlds that are simply trying to be free. She was not alone. Over the next month, 7 more Council fleets defected. Not all of them joined the rebellion. Some simply went home to defend their own worlds. But the result was the same. The Council's military power was dissolving. On Earth, preparations continued for what everyone knew was coming. Either the Council would reform and negotiate, or it would make one final attempt to restore control through violence. Either way, humanity had to be ready. Dr. Soyan worked with alien historians to recover lost histories. She discovered that nearly every Council species had once resisted tribute. But those stories had been systematically erased, replaced with narratives of peaceful integration and mutual benefit. They rewrote history, Soyan explained to a gathering of delegates. They made everyone forget that there was ever a choice. That resistance was possible. That freedom was worth fighting for. Then we make sure this history is never forgotten, Doyun said. Everything that has happened, every sacrifice, every victory. We record it all and make sure every species knows what was won here. Captain Juno had been working on something different. While others focused on military and political matters, he had been organizing what he called the Liberation Network. Agents and sympathizers throughout Council space, ready to support rebellions and provide intelligence. We have people on 300 worlds now, Juno reported. Not armies. Just regular people who are tired of the tribute system. Dock workers, teachers, farmers. When the moment comes, they will act. When what moment comes? Jiwan asked. When the Council makes its final choice, Juno said. Reform or war. When they choose, these people will make sure their own worlds choose freedom. That moment came 6 months after Earth's defiance began. Velmoth, facing the complete collapse of Council authority, made a desperate gamble. The Supreme Arbiter ordered the deployment of the Council's most powerful weapons. Ancient devices that had not been used since the early days of the Council's rise. Weapons capable of destroying entire planets. If we cannot rule, Velmoth announced to what remained of the Council, and we will make sure no one else can either. We will destroy Earth and every rebel world. We will create such devastation that the survivors will beg us to restore order. But Velmoth had miscalculated. The announcement did not create fear. It created unity. Worlds that had been neutral suddenly chose sides. Council members who had remained loyal out of tradition found themselves facing rebellions in their own territories. Military officers who had followed orders without question finally asked themselves if they were willing to commit genocide. The Council's Reformation faction, led by Consular Vex and 36 other representatives, made their move. They declared Velmoth unfit for leadership and called for the Supreme Arbiter's removal. The vote was close. But in the end, enough council members chose survival over domination. Velmoth was deposed, stripped of power, and exiled to a remote world. The council did not dissolve immediately, but it reformed. The tribute system was abolished. The mandatory conscription ended. Worlds were given the choice to remain in the council as equal members or leave to govern themselves. 1 year after Doyon had stood in the council chambers and heard the impossible demands, he stood there again. But this time, the chamber looked different. Representatives no longer floated above others. They sat in circles, equals discussing cooperation instead of masters dictating terms. The Galactic Council is reformed, the new Supreme Arbiter announced. It was not a being of authority, but a rotating position, held for 1 year before passing to another species. We acknowledge the crimes of the past. We acknowledge that our system was built on exploitation, and we commit to building something better. Not every world rejoined. Many chose independence, forming smaller federations and alliances. But they did so freely, cooperating when it benefited them and maintaining sovereignty. When it did not, Earth became the center of the Free Systems Alliance, a coalition of worlds that had fought together during the Revolution. 23 species working together, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Admiral Haijin and Commander Talon met regularly to coordinate defense. Dr. Mingo and alien scientists shared technologies that accelerated progress for everyone. Soying worked to ensure that every species could reclaim its lost history and culture. President Jiwan addressed the new Galactic Assembly in its first session. We were asked to choose between survival and freedom, she said. Humanity chose both. We chose to fight not just for ourselves, but for the principle that every being has the right to determine their own fate. She looked around at the assembled representatives. Today, we build a galaxy where no one has to make that choice again, where cooperation replaces coercion, where freedom is not earned through suffering, but recognized as the basic right of all intelligent life. The assembly erupted in what each species expressed as approval. Some cheered, some hummed, some flashed light patterns, but the meaning was universal. 5 years later, a young woman named Yunji from Hervac 2 reported for duty on an Alliance defense ship. She had grown up hearing stories of Earth's defiance, of Commander Talon's courage. Of the humans who had refused to kneel. Her commanding officer was Captain Junho, who had been promoted after his work organizing the Liberation Network. "Welcome aboard," Junho said. "Glad to have you." Yunji looked around the ship. The crew was mixed. Humans working alongside Hervakians, Yelthrins, Torvakians, and a dozen other species. Each one serving not as a conscript, but as a volunteer. Each one protecting a galaxy that had learned, finally, what freedom meant. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" Yunji asked. "Always," Junho replied. "That is what we fought for." "I just want to say thank you," Yunji said. "My parents paid tribute their entire lives. They never knew anything different. But I get to live free because humans refused to accept that there was no choice." Junho thought about all the people who had died to make that freedom possible. Captain Taiwan ramming the Council flagship, Youngji and her suicide squadron, the 180,000 humans who had perished in the defense of Earth, the thousands more from other species who had joined the fight. "We all paid for it," Junho said quietly. "Every species that stood up, every person who refused to bow. That is what you need to remember. Humanity did not free the galaxy alone. We just proved that freedom was possible. Everyone else did the hard work of claiming it. On Earth, a memorial stood in the center of Geneva. It was a simple monument, a black wall inscribed with names. Every human who had died in the revolution. Every alien who had fallen fighting for freedom got at the top, in every known language. A single line was inscribed. They refused to kneel, and in standing, raised a galaxy. Humanity's defiant answer to the Galactic Council's tribute demand had not just sparked chaos. It had ignited a revolution that changed everything. The tribute system that had stood for 4,000 years was gone. The council that had ruled through fear and exploitation was reformed. And across hundreds of worlds, billions of beings lived free. It had not been easy. The cost had been terrible. But in the end, humanity had proven something that the galaxy had forgotten. Freedom was worth fighting for. And once that truth was remembered, nothing could ever make it forgotten again.